Become a member and support the channel. Old World Tactics, Battle Reports, the 2 Plus podcast. G'day guys, welcome back to another episode of the 2 Plus podcast. Alex is here with me again. I am Paddy, and we are back again for another chat about Warhammer the Old World. And this episode, we are going to be talking about competitive Warhammer, particularly tournament play, and its place in the broader Warhammer community. It spawned from a video that we released a couple days ago, maybe a couple weeks ago, by the time you listen to this, and it created a lot of interesting reaction, which Alex and I have definitely had a bit of an insight into the Warhammer world since that video. But Alex, thank you for joining me. How are you going?
Good. Thanks, Paddy. Good to see you.
Yeah, and you, two bald brothers that like grey shirts is a trend of this channel. We should really collaborate with our wardrobe department a little bit better, but we'll get there eventually. But let's talk about competitive Warhammer, because for me personally, when I started thinking about playing the old world, I never thought I was going to play tournaments. I think I said that in our last episode, but I have played a lot of competitive Warhammer now. I think four tournaments now. So, although still a relative newbie, I have a bit of perspective on it. But tell me about your experience so far with it, and what you think for someone who doesn't play competitive Warhammer. What's the first thing you would tell them?
I think they should play. I think so. If you remember when we started playing, I don't think any of us had any. If anything, we were probably anti playing in tournaments. I'd played a lot of games for a long time and was burnt out by them, and not particularly interested in buying into sort of the structures that support tournament play for different sorts of reasons. They take a lot of time. I don't think they're always as big on integrity as people might think they are. But then that Old Hammer tournament came up, and I was itching to play so badly that I just ended up signing up. I can't remember the time from when I told you and Mike that it was happening to signing up. I reckon it was less than 36 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, and I think it's just about, which will probably be the theme, there's a lot of people, particularly with Warhammer, that don't get many games. And I think this is the way to find them. And you're going to meet what the response to Christian's video was a bit surprising to me, about how polarizing, I suppose, the response was. But I think that if you are going to go to events, and they don't even have to be very big, you're going to find people like you. And that might be one way for people who, especially people who used to play Warhammer, or like have always been interested in the game and pursued it mostly as a solitary sort of thing. It's much easier, I think, to find opponents now and in the way that you want to play.
Yeah, I think that stigma's really true, what you're pointing out. A lot of people who don't go to tournaments hold tournaments in a certain light. And I was one of those people before I went to one, for sure. As I said, I wasn't never planning on playing tournaments when I first started playing the old world. But after the first tournament I went to, it really dispelled a lot of my predisposition about the tournament scene. I always thought it was cutthroat at every table, with like rules discrepancies every 5 minutes and being caught out and gotcha moments. But that has totally not been my experience, and that could be because of our pretty friendly local meta scene at the Western Sydney Wargamers. But I've had very good games at tournaments. I've met very nice people at tournaments. I haven't, it's not a 100% success rate, but I'd expect that it wouldn't be, meeting a brand new person playing Warhammer against someone who might be as competitive as me. And
Mm.
maybe I think really the part that has affected my experience of Warhammer is the social play around it. Generally, the Warhammer has been of a high standard. The only time where it's been a little unenjoyable is probably still too hard, because it hasn't been a terrible experience, but there's been social interactions which would be no different to meeting someone in real life, where I just kind of wouldn't necessarily get along with that person in real life, but I'm playing Warhammer against them. But that I would say is like a 10% experience, and
Mm. I
80% of
think
it
there
has
are
been
games
enjoyable.
that are full of those gotchas, and that might be where some people are coming from. So Warhammer, I'm starting to realize that my background is more distinctive than I thought, and I have played the game from like a long, far begotten era and missed some of the precursors that have influenced other people, and even in a recent past, which is not even that recent, but like 10 years ago. So my experience with the game is almost 30 years ago and 20 years ago. And there were very different eras. But what you're saying, I think there's plenty of people who come from other game systems where that's what's like. Like, for example, if you play competitive card games, that's what they're like. And it's about, not necessarily gotchas like tricks, but I made less mistakes than you. That's why I won. And I think that attitude we sort of became a bit wary of when we first started watching some of the Warhol games, that there was, when you're really good and you don't make any mistakes, it does seem to look like it's the opponent who makes the least mistakes wins. But in Warhammer, the dice are just too influential. So people blame the dice or say you just got the dice, but I'm not sure that that's fair. I think that's just a part of the game that you have to accept, which came up in that video.
Yeah, so the video we're talking about, the one that I mentioned at the top, one that Alex mentioned there, is we spoke to Christian Denarius, who is an Australian Warhammer player who plays exclusively online on Warhol. Won the first esport tournament that's run by Square Based, which is, in our opinion, kind of like the World Cup of Warhammer, but happens every 3 months or so at this rate. Um, and then made it to the semis, I think, in the second one,
Yeah.
and had some pretty had the two lists he took were, maximized to a T, which, like, there was absolutely an edge case in each list that he embellished to make it as strong
Mm.
as possible. Although he said he could have made it stronger in the second iteration, but that when we posted that video, a lot of people thought that because he played online in a competitive tournament, competitive scene, which we think is arguably the most competitive scene, where you see
Mm.
probably the best Warhammer players in its pure, like, rules as written sense. Um, they all play in these tournaments, but that seemed to detract from people's opinion of him more than give
Yeah.
him any clout, which was very surprising to us because for us, I think we have a fairly balanced approach to Warhammer where we like models that look good, we like people that are nice across the table, that have an enjoyable time with, but most of all, we like to play well, and we like to create lists that are strong through creativity and not just, this is the absolute best thing. We both like to have a little bit of an element that's our favorite piece of the list. Um, but and we believe Christian's kind of like that as well. He's just doing it to an extreme degree, but his pleasure of Warhammer comes from the intense creativity in, like, minutia of list building. But the reaction
Mm.
was quite divisive.
It was. And I was surprised because in some realms, winning just makes everything better, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, people blame the losers, and it's almost like winning, people get defensive about that in Warhammer, and we have tried on this channel to be, this tactics videos are our most successful offering, and they've got a broad audience. People from all around the world, surprisingly to us, are really into it, and we thank everybody who's shown us that support, because it's obvious in the data behind the scenes. But people leave really great comments. They talk about the game, and for us, like, we play to win. We want to win, and it's about how you do that. I think that matters, and I don't think given that he only played online, and some people do. I was surprised because, just say you're one of those guys, and there's plenty of them, who plays the same list in real life and online. I feel like, okay, a bit different, whereas he's doing things with the online format that you probably couldn't have done in real life. Like I think the pillar list, as you sort of talked about, not many people ever really ran 5 in real life. I know some did, and I think they should have given him more credit because he really came out of nowhere at that first tournament with pillars. And you can look at our videos in the past that we didn't really, even when we broke it down, understand what was happening. But then that royal guard list has never existed in real world either. They're edge cases that you find online, and he's maxing out list building, which I think is where the game is at its peak. Like not in enjoyment, but if you want to be the best player in the world, it's mostly about the list, and you have to play it well. But the advantage you gain by working out where Games Workshop's terrible rules are at their worst gives you that edge. You know, having a chariot inside a ginormous amount of scorpions, being able to shoot 140 poison shots, the fact that Pillar had a lot going for it, let alone that you could choose it and then control 5 of them and get out of dispel range. All of that was very clever. Like, isn't that the point in some ways? And yeah, I think I'm surprised. I was really surprised because I do think, you know, at the end, when you see people, there's a lot of applause for other types of people who win things. I mean, no one's criticizing Richie for winning with dwarves all the time, you know? So it's almost like you've got to present a certain way. And I thought it was sad that that's how it came across, because I think there's an appetite for people who want to play well. And there's a lot you can gain from just going and trying to win, and through that, you know, making friends with people over the table.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. You mentioned our tactics videos, and just before I get into them, I did want to mention just another video that we brought out a week ago. But for those of you that don't know, we launched a Patreon and YouTube membership. We also have a free Discord. The details of all of them will be in the link to this channel. But just a quick shout out um, to our first Patreons, which thank you very much, to Ghost, Silver Dave, and Sick, and then also YouTube member uh, Jeff. Sorry, how could I forget the big G? But thank you so far to those people who have been offering support to us. But the main way we've been receiving support is through these tactics videos, which I think, to your point, shows that people have an appreciation for the rules of the game and using them to advantage. We're by no means, you know, NASA brained Warhammer players, but we play enough Warhammer to have some insights on rules that you can use to your advantage to gain advantage in a game. And those tactics videos are how we've connected with people online, how we've grown our YouTube channel. And I think just the mere content, what it is, which is teaching people how to use the rule set to your advantage, shows that people have an appreciation for actually winning games of Warhammer. And um, this is where it creates this interesting divide where it almost feels like the biggest naysayers of it all are people that don't care at all about winning. And it's just about putting the models on the table, which I think is a real thing in Warhammer because of the beautiful nature of the game, what it looks like on the table. But it's not what it necessarily is for me. It's a part of it, definitely. But if it is your thing, I'm not going to hold it against you. But there seems to be a big thing about don't try and beat me for some
Mm.
people, which has been
Yeah,
very surprising.
that's right. It is a bit funny, isn't it? There is a bit like that, like a bit sometimes passive aggressive about, oh, it's all good until the dice start falling a certain way, and then someone's gotten lucky. It's like, yeah, we're not going to roll 4s
It is a
all
dice
day.
game. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a dice game, and it's a the complexity is a feature, not a bug. The dice are a feature, not a bug, and that came up in that video, and I think it's true. Like when we said, why would you play this over other games? There's a level of acceptance to what happens, and within that, it means you just try your best. It's sort of like life. Like you've got to do that. Like you can't control the outcome as much as you would like. You can control it a lot, but I think there are different levels to the game, and I think that yeah, there's that list versus list game, and I don't particularly enjoy that. I love list building, love it. I love the challenge of a tournament and trying to get every point count for something. However, lots of games are like that where the list, you turn up and it's a good matchup or a bad matchup. And that's okay to me when you're playing a game that goes for 10 minutes. And you're trying to game a field of people and play that way. And even that's what burnt me out on playing Magic in the end, that you sort of had to, the night before, everybody would buy cards of a particular type. And if you didn't have access to the whole set, which became increasingly expensive when they released mythic rares, like maybe 5 times more expensive, you just couldn't adapt. And so you might have turned up with that deck you're good with, but you're being outgunned. And I think sadly at the moment, you're sort of seeing that right at the top of the metagame where you sort of can play something that you might just have no chance against competitively. And that came up again, Christian saying, you know, this deck, you have a trivial chance of winning based on the maths.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm sure that annoyed some of the people who chose to write comments. However, I do think that that is just a reality of events that you might need to accept. But that's, if you don't want to spend 3 hours doing that, then you don't have to, you'll find other people who are playing something different. And again, he talked about the movement phase, and the movement phase is a big deal. So like you can play, it's really, that's what you can control. So, you know, in a game where it isn't already over because of particular interactions in the list that you can't deal with, like ethereal versus no magic weapons, I mean something like that, it is movement. And I had a great game on the weekend to the second game where the lists were pretty powerful, but and meta enough on the top table after the first round, and I lost, and it was just all about movement, and I was trying to gain the most out of movement. So there's that side, and then I think down from there you're getting into the next level of players who've taken stuff where they're just going to have to throw it in. If they roll well, they're going to beat you, and it's exciting, like Monster Slayer. And they're going to send their guy in, or they're going to try to cast really big spells and see what comes off. But you'll always have the guys at the bottom tables as well who are just, you know, there to send their general in with nothing else but a great weapon, and just hopefully, because that's what a general should do. So I'm not sure why people complain. I think they need to, we've spoken about this a little bit more, about, we call them tournaments, but mostly they're Warhammer events.
Mm-hmm.
And you turn up and there are different tiers of players. And if you're trying to win, it's going to take a certain level of commitment, like in anything in life, that you've got to be, that's your goal, and you're willing to sacrifice 9 hours to do that, and a lot of money and a lot of time. But otherwise, like, people complaining about a problem that doesn't really exist if they go to events. Like, there's great people of all types there.
Absolutely. And just on your point of movement and well, list v list, and where you can, you know, find a win or at least a solid draw out of a giant list mismatch. There's been probably 2 out of my 12 games, probably 3 times that a list has been significantly stronger than mine. I think I lost every time, but it wasn't purely because of the list. Like, I had plays and I made mistakes, and they're all based around movement, which is in my control. There was a couple where dice didn't go my way, but it wasn't the deciding factor.
Mm.
I got caught. I've been caught out with a dragon in the wrong spot. I got overrun into like a charge overrun into one of my units that I left in the wrong position. Playing wood elves, all of these things very, very punishable, and I got punished for it. But they were my decisions that backfired. And like, what I'm trying to get better at, I think I've gotten better at, is appreciating the skill in that. Even if your back is up against the wall, sure, you're probably not going to 20-0 this person. You might not even 12-8 them. But a 10-10 against a huge list disadvantage, to me, counts as something, and it still gives you a problem to solve. There's very few local scene tournaments that are running these top meta lists. You'll run into them eventually, especially if you're playing semi-competitive lists, but it's super rare that you're going to come up against a 6-screen list or 5-screen list, whatever the screen version is, or maxed out exiles in the hands of someone that knows how to play them.
Yeah.
There's always variances. Like, there's been strong lists in our tournaments that haven't won. There was and I'm not sure. I've never met this guy. I don't know his name, but there was a list with 2 high elf dragons in it in our last tournament, lost first round.
Richard Hill.
Yeah, never met Richard, and it's not a slide on you. But I do know the guy who beat him, Tom. Shout out Old World Behemoths. If anyone hasn't checked out that channel, it's another Australian YouTube channel that's just kicked off that does some cool hobby and old world chats. But he beat a double dragon high elf list with ogres, which everyone thinks is a waste of time as a faction. But he's found a way through list building. And I think that's something that needs to be appreciated because that's how you find the joy. We've spoken about the joy in the unfolding of Warhammer. It's not just on the tabletop, it's list building, unfolding, creating your army, rolling dice, having them go your way and not go your way, and then pulling, like outmaneuvering someone, recognizing it, and being like, that's really, I'm impressed with my play, your play, that's really good, well done. It's so rarely, although it can steer the way the game is played, about just this list beats this list, so bad luck, don't roll any dice, let's call it a 16-4.
Yeah, you got to play. And look, I think when you talked about those categories, we've sort of spoken about all of them on this channel. So we've gone to the extremes with list building. We do a lot of those list analysis of the local events and that are becoming bigger. And beneath that, though, we've talked about the great moments of generals just charging in and having a go and whiffing for eight turns in a row. So you do have to you're there to find like-minded people, I suppose. Like the play in the game comes from different parts and you're going to find different things. And this isn't some sort of, why can't we all get along kumbaya thing? But I just think a lot, the typical person posting a lot on the internet probably would be happier if they were doing rather than just talking about it all the time. Maybe that's something to say about us, but I think that that's what that was about for me, is that you've got to just get out and play and you'll be surprised. You'll find people like you. And for us, we've called it table 6 to 12 is sort of our sweet spot.
Yeah.
Um, just don't have I like to take probably in list building slightly harder lists. I don't mind movement, but I don't really I play a lot of skirmishes and don't enjoy it as much. As in the day, I don't like doing it all day. I could probably do it for one game and like it, but then I just get sort of almost feel guilty that I'm taking 75 to 80% of the game time as well, just fiddling around. And then beneath that though, yep, I like to take something that has a bit of spike variance. So I've got a shot and I'd love to, like to see combats happen for the sake of it. I think that just for the sake of drama, but I think that's what, depending on where you fit on that wavelength, you're going to find people. And, in the background of, if you've followed this channel, we've done the Old Hammer series. There are lots of offshoots of people playing. Sydney is a really big place. Really, calling it one city is ridiculous. It's like Los Angeles, if people have any sort of idea of how the sprawl comes out from everyone internationally thinks of Bondi Beach, but I live near the Blue Mountains, which is like a national park, and it's still considered the same city. So I think you'd be shocked that all of these people are finding other people based from the Old Hammer series of events, and sometimes through this channel, which are just, Blacktown is sort of smack bang, closer to where I live than what most people would consider Sydney City. So that's all come out of just in coming to those events.
Yeah, and that's kind of the point I suppose we're trying to make, is that everyone can appreciate that Warhammer has so many different elements to it that people enjoy. I think an underappreciated thing maybe from our channel is the hobby aspect, although we both do quite a lot of it without recognizing that it might be a part of the game that we really enjoy. But some people are all about that. Some people are all about their general on Warhorse that they painted up one time, that looks sick and has awesome basing and is standing on a rock or something. And as you said, you'll be so surprised.
I did one. Bloodthirster on a tree stump.
There you go.
So jam. We should have called him up to have done it.
Yeah.
It's not just
it makes a big difference though to some people. To some people it doesn't. They just slap
good
contrasts on it.
Yeah.
And want to roll dice, and that is also
I
fun.
did put contrast on it as well, but it was more than just my basic brown base. So
The hobby aspect, right? It's shining through now.
yeah. We
uh,
do it like it's on the Discord. That's been one of the biggest parts of the Discord is being the hobby, shockingly. So to me, anyway.
yeah, I want to though pivot a little bit because there's been a lot of talk about comp at the moment, which is another very divisive part of the Warhammer scene. Early, I think, and I don't want to say this because people are now talking about comp, but in the backlines again, you and I have been talking about running tournaments and what a tournament pack would look like. I've always been on the side of comp the shit out of it because there's some purely busted stuff in Warhammer the Old World. And I think it's maybe 4 or 5 things you can fix to really level the playing field. But there's been a few packs that have come out, the Aussie Rules pack through Pash and Chris from Dwellers Below. And then we've also seen Val Heffelfinger's Renegade rework, which we can get to in a sec. But where do you sit on the world in the world of comp? Do you think it's up to the TO and make the pack as however they like? And if people come, that means they're willing to, use that as the boundaries and play within it, or should it be restrictive comp on the TO, as in like don't go too far?
Mm. Look, the biggest thing for me is that if people come to the events, then it's successful, and maybe we're in a market that's not as large as other places. So one of the things that Old World Fanatics looked at was Blue Ford, who ran Nova, and he has quite specific comp, and it was specific at Nova last year. But sometimes when you're in a North American market, there's just such a huge amount of people willing to play that it's successful because people sell tickets, but for them maybe 100 tickets is successful, less and 70 is not so. So for me, I being someone who's trying to run tournaments, that you've got to be in touch with the player base, and there's a danger online that we are tend to be people, especially if you're into the list building side of things, who have like a probably relatively smart person, high enough IQ that you can build your own rationale for why things should be the way they are in your head. But the danger of being that sort of person is you never test those ideas in reality, and the way you test those is by talking to other people. And I think we've spoken about a bit on this channel, but the danger is to exclude people because, like these conversations following the last video about competitive play, people don't bother anymore to sort of say, let's fix this. The world has too much opportunity to do different things at your leisure time that you just leave. People just leave. There's a big theory about things called exit and voice. Should we be saving institutions or should we be inventing new ones? And really, people just invent new ones now. The internet makes things happen so quickly. So in one way, like, who are you doing it for? The comp? And when we ran the event in February, pulled right back off of comp because we weren't sure yet who we were doing it for. And it's probably, as you say, Paddy, now time that there was a bit of fatigue at the last 2K rules as written. It was Throne of Skulls, but I ran a dragon 2+, 5+, 6+, and it took one wound randomly, I feel. It was not in danger the whole day, and I was playing very aggressively with it. Um, I think there's a want to do things, but you want everyone to play. Like, people miss one tournament and sometimes they never come back, or one event. I don't think you want to risk that in certain places. So I'm interested, like, if the tournament sells out, it's a success. But if we're trying to build towards some sort of ideal, I'm not sure there is one, really. Games Workshop, love to hate them, but they create that thing that everyone can hate by having that set of rules. And some people will never go outside the book. Other people will want to make adjustments. And by negotiation, you do those things. Tournament organizers like myself, it's a lot of work behind the scenes, and you live or die based on the people who turn up on the day. And if they don't come, or you can't force them to, that's the reckoning on your comp. So yeah, I think it's good for people to talk about, but I think as well that they just should be careful about who's it for. Is it for those list builders? If so, like, are there better ways to go about that? Is it for the guys who want to play a better game, which I think might be us to an extent? We want to see some of those models in the middle get a bit more play, a bit more dice involved. Is it for the people so they can run their captain on a warhorse into a dragon and not just be squished in the first turn? So as long as you know what that is, that's what I'm mostly interested in. I think what I notice is the more specific the comp, I think the more niche the audience, and there's a lot of loud voices on the internet competitively, but are their audiences pretty small?
Yeah, I think what I've seen in comp so far is when it's so targeted, other factions, Bretonia, Tomb Kings, tend to just skate through anyway.
Yeah.
So really, like, it's got to be so finessed that it's all encompassing, and that's why I think a lot of people love the idea of scenario based comp,
Mm.
of capturing objectives and killing the general for extra bonus points or table quarters and that kind of stuff, because it doesn't affect the list building and it doesn't accidentally make someone else the new big bad of the comp meta
Mm.
in that scene, which I think is a little bit on Throne of Skulls, because you see Bretonia and Two Kings pretty unaffected by that in my eyes. But you see Warriors of Chaos who can't take their big thing, which is at least at the super competitive scene of a giant Chaos
Mm.
Dragon Lord, is unable to be taken. And then the things that can compete against them, like for example, my Wood Elves, my dragon can't be kitted out enough to, like, I can
Mm.
still take one, but it's still not going to do crap. It might help against Bretonia, but I don't think it would really make a difference with 2 5-up saves against most geared out lists. But that's, I think, the difficulty of comp, and I think it is dangerous territory. Although I'm in the camp of just comp until we find the right way. You make a good point of, as soon as you turn someone away, if that's their local tournament scene, they might just
Mm.
never come back and they won't find another scene. So
Yeah.
I'm glad we
I
can't.
think Bretonia is the really one I'm worried about, and that's that new one in the blue forward one. I can't remember even if
I haven't
sorry
seen the
blue.
blue forward one. What's
It's
the blue forward one? I can try and find it.
yeah, I can't remember the title of the thing because it came out of
Square
I
Hammer.
wasn't even aware of it until Old World Fanatics, but they say Bretonia is pretty heavily comped, and I haven't listened to all of it, but he even comped Lucky Heirloom and Iron Spike Shield, which were his own sort of innovations. Maybe it was just being defensive, but my concern is that I believe maybe a bit, this is just speculation, but the peg without peg knights, that's all they really are. That they would even be like wood elves without pillar are like below average. That Bretonia is below average without pegs in the unit. Like, and I know the characters are amazing, but if they can't be shielded by those units, if you just have one guy on a peg, even with Knightly Temper and Ogre Blade, I just don't know if it would be so great. I think the pegs are the whole thing. So, whereas Tomb Kings, I think, have a lot of other options. Even Warriors, to an extent, and Vampire Counts, I think, have a lot of other options. Like, there's lots of replacement units. So that's exactly what you say. And I think you just got to test your ideas. I think gamers are very abstract thinkers, and I am certainly one of those people. But I think what you said about, if you remember when the fact came out, how much it hurts when your army is targeted. And while like the news about sisters is a whole thing. I loved that Sky kind of thing because I just didn't have to take a dragon. I could take something I felt like could compete with a dragon, and I wouldn't have to, if I didn't play a dragon, I'd have a level 4 that could beat up on monstrous units. And that just got, when it gets scuppered, it does feel like you feel alienated from the community. So you've got to be very careful because this is a game where people just have one army. They don't switch decks and buy something new every second week. um, they are like a mono red player or something, and that's all they've got. And some people have waited 5 years for units that now this is their time because Bretonnia and Tomb Kings were irrelevant before. So I think that's the biggest thing I worry about with comp. And I guess in our events we're not doing. army specific comp for that. And I just think it gets too complicated. Like when I looked up Swedish comp, it turned me off. I was like, I don't want to have to read the yellow pages. Sorry for people who don't know what that is, but like I don't have to read a legal document to play the game. Like, it's just too much. Like I want to read the army book and sort of think, yeah, wouldn't it be cool to have um like jungle swarms be part of, like, maybe I can make them work with this synergy, but not have to cross-reference 6 different parts of the PDF to make sure that I'm at 8 comp points, not 7 or something like that. So that's where I think that's at.
Yeah, I would agree. And I want to do a little semi pivot here because one thing that came out, and a lot of people have already talked about this already, um, is this legacy Renegade legacy pack from Square-Based's Val Heffelfinger. This is basically a rewrite of some of the rules for the legacy factions.
Mm.
It's, in my opinion, and I think your opinion as well, it's a very light touch, which I think is the right
Yeah.
approach. And we were happy to see it and are considering whether it has a place in tournaments moving forward here, especially ones that we run as well, because you, as a legacy player, have felt the the pain of the rule books or the PDFs. They're not rule books for some of them. You're a Lizardmen player, so why don't we go to Lizardmen? I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I'll put the link in here. People can have a look at it themselves. But a lot of YouTube channels, Spotify channels have already spoken about this, so by all means, go have a look at yourself at those ones. But can you see this Lizardmen list here? Do you want to kind of walk us through some of the changes
Yeah,
of what
yeah.
it means
No,
for
I
your
know it off
experience?
the top of my head as well. Look, I think it's really good. Like, to tell you the truth, I think my hat is off to Val because he and Rob probably have the biggest platform in for the old world that there
Not
is,
probably.
and they
It's
could use it.
like shout out to all of us grinding out there, but like these guys are the ones
Yeah,
who are at the tip of the mountain.
yeah, and they could use that in for different things, and I think this is a wonderful thing to have used it for because, and again, I can only go off feelings rather than intellectualizing everything. But once I read this, I felt like, not only could I play Lizardmen again, but that maybe I could play Skaven. Do you know what I mean? Like
Mm,
that there was some attempt to bring this back. And if you, some of the previous videos we've done just recently saying that GW feel very aggressively against Legacy and that, in itself was really like sort of depressing to a lot of people when the last fact came out. So, and part of why they were negative about the game, I think. But like, it's a bit uneven in the sense that if you're looking for things, because I'm building or have built a demon army as well, and there's not a lot there for demons. I think correctly, very little to do with vampire counts and dark elves. Like vampire counts are much better than dark elves, but dark elves are good enough. Like you can play
yeah.
a competitive dark elf army out there. And I think Lizardmen were a little bit better than this than they were getting credit for. Like units were overcosted rather than unplayable, like the Slan. But yeah, it's really good. Like I think the thing that I like about these changes are the edits have been made to try to fit within Old World, the game, rather than to bring back 8 things that people liked about 8th edition, things that people liked about 6th edition, or even like me, who played the game in 4th and 5th between 4th and 5th edition, and was shocked at like how different the Old World was, even in general, like what 8th ed had sort of become. So I think that's what's really good, and I think he should get a lot of credit for that. That I really feel it's, I don't know why it hasn't been more obvious to other people that he's deliberately not, like he's trying to not ruffle any feathers here and just
Yeah.
make these armies relevant, which they weren't relevant at all. Instead of like knocking armies on the head, like you're not, I mean, you may be able to win a tournament with one of these now, but I don't think they've changed things that massively.
Well,
It
why
just
don't we
made them playable.
just let's spotlight Lizardmen here, and we'll just quickly, because it's not a lot of reading for Lizardmen. So you, as a
So do you
lizard
want
men
to know
player,
what's made them relevant? Because I can sort of tell you
yeah, correct,
what
yeah.
changes
So
are made.
why don't I'll read out each section and you just tell me what stands out in that section because this will only take 5 minutes. Um, but this is does not matter. But characters, up to 50% of your army points may be spent on 0 to 1 Slan Mage Priest per 1500 points, 0 to 1 Saurus Blood per 1000 points, Saurus Scar Veterans, Skink Priests, and Skink Chiefs. First of their what stands out.
All right, so you could only take one slan before, and this is a good thing. You're not going to play many formats where you're going to want to take two, but that just makes the slan like other types of level fours.
But
So where you could take,
doesn't that mean you can only take two at 3,000 points?
yeah. So what I mean is that this sort of change is about coherency with the old world rules, where other armies get these sorts of like, you can take two of these things at a time instead of no one's ever going to take two slants. But if you're
Yeah.
into that sort of thing and in your past owned a Mazda Mundi or like Lord Croak or something, you've got some world where this is playable now, whereas in the Legacy PDF, it's just one.
Sorry,
Almost.
I'm being a big doofus here. And could you not could you not take it at 1,500 points before, or am I making that up?
You could, but what it is that now you can take two at 3,000, and
Yeah.
that in the old back in the day there were different versions of slans,
Mm.
even though they're sort of all powerful in the lore and have their own temple city. That was possible, whereas in the PDF you could only take one. Similarly, like the old blood, you could only take an old blood or a skink priest per
Yeah.
1,000. Just some
That's
rant. It was
cooked.
just
That's
rando.
so
Like
cooked.
this is like edits. Like almost you feel like it was deliberate. So there were limitations there, which meant while you could take an old blood and a slan, the slan was very expensive at 2,000 points, and the skink priests, like you took one and you couldn't take the old blood, even though it's a level 160 pointer, So
There's a clear standout in core for me, which
yeah,
is you don't have to take the 10 Saurus, which is such a
yeah,
blight on the Lizardmen roster. But core is 25% of your army's points must be spent on Saurus, Skink Skirmishers, and Jungle Swarms, 0 to 1 unit of Temple Guard if your general is a Slan Mage Priest. Is that in
yeah.
the normal PDF?
No, so I don't know if anyone would take it in this format without a level 4, sadly. So you're going to see most people just run Temple Guard now. But yeah, Temple Guard were unlimited before, which also didn't make sense out of core.
In
Like
core.
again, yeah. So
Yeah,
you had to take Saurus first, and they're so expensive, really, that you wouldn't have a lot of room left over to take many Temple Guard. But
yeah,
technically, you could take as many as you wanted, and that didn't make much sense thematically too, because they are the guardians of the Slan, and they have a bunch
yeah.
of abilities that influence that.
So now the change that this creates is people probably don't ever play Saurus. They take what 20 Temple Guard and Skinks.
Yeah, but it leaves it open that if you don't want to take the Slan, you can
Yeah,
take them, and you not have to take them. But yeah, because you're not going to be able to take the Temple Guard without the Slan. It'd be hard to fill out the core at
yeah.
2,000. It's just Skinks and Jungle Swarms.
So into special, 50% of your points may be spent on Chameleon, Skinks, Croxagore, Temple Guard, Cold One Riders, Pterodon Riders, Ripidactyls, Bastillodons, and Stegodon. What's changed there?
Stegodons have just come out of rare into special. Just normal Stegodons.
Normal Stegodons, which makes sense because you would think the ancient Stegodon is the
You would
rare
think so.
version of the Stegodon.
I like it as well. I think those Strength 5 monsters, like you've had experience with Tree Men, they're just not as great as people think in
Yeah,
this format. Necrosphinxes are amazing, but they have about 68 special rules and are cheap. But these 200 pointers that are Strength 5 and don't fly, or Killing Blow Monster Slayer things, there's a lot of them around, and they're better in special than rare. Because you can now just whack one in the right type of list, but you're not you're not really going to take them that often over the ancient.
I would have been totally fine if I saw this would have gone into the realms of maybe too heavy a touch, but Stegodons having AP on their impact hits, because it is absolutely bizarre to me that a giant dinosaur with horns on its face doesn't pierce armor when
It
it's
has -3 AP on the attacks, the
yeah,
great horns.
which it
So,
makes with the things that it makes with its impact hits. I don't know, it's bizarre.
yeah, I mean,
My
in
dwarf,
general, I don't like that rule. I think the no AP on impact hits is interesting to me in
yeah.
general, but yeah.
Moving to rare, up to 25% of your army spent on salamanders, razordons, troglodons, and ancient stegodons. What's there for you?
Yeah, look, same. That's what it is minus the Stegodon.
Yeah, okay, cool. Mercenaries, no change or nothing relevant, 25%. No one uses allies. BSB, is there a change here?
No.
Okay, cool. So there is a rule change here for cold-blooded, right?
Yeah,
So
massive.
leadership or break tests. It's normally just leadership test, isn't it?
No. At the
Oh no.
moment, it's just panic, fear, and terror.
Oh yeah. So okay. Yeah.
So that
So
in itself is just incredible.
yeah.
Like, obviously, it affects stupidity, which is the big one for cold ones being unplayable at the moment.
Oh, I didn't see
But
that. Yeah. Okay. I see
yeah,
that.
it's in the past they've had that rule, but that really, I think this rule is a little bit underestimated. That in previous editions you didn't have fallback in good order, and this is really going to be like a big deal now.
Totally. It gives them a bit of sturdiness. Because cold-blooded's a
It
great
pretty
rule.
much makes them unbreakable in my mind
Yeah.
with falling back. Well, not unbreakable, but for they're not going to fail. Yeah, they're not going to fail break tests on leadership
What's
9 or from the Slan.
yeah, and is the Saurus leadership 8,
Yeah,
I presume? Yeah. That seems to be like the
yeah,
baseline good unit leadership in this edition. Okay, so changing back to monstrous infantry, which surely the whole old world rejoices at that, because that is, as someone who has copped a FAQ to the face, this is among the absolute worst of all FAQs. I just,
mm,
I don't know. I won't try and figure it out, but that means it can now use Lookout Sir from Temple
yeah.
Guard, where it couldn't before when they changed it after 2 months of gameplay, which is great because it means Slans get put on the table, which for Lizardmen is incredible. And for anyone playing against Lizardmen is incredible in my eyes. Base size from 50 to 66, making a bit bigger. What's that about?
It's so that it can fit inside the unit,
Gotcha. Yeah,
because they're on 30s.
they're
But
30s. Okay.
I actually think this is a bit of overkill, to tell you the truth. That there's been this campaign of hate against the Slan, and yet it is overcosted. And I think the changes down the track are more important for the Slan. I sort of felt like if you take the Slan, you had to take Temple Guard, which eventually got to that point. But I've got lots of battle reports on this channel from not taking it and doing all right with the Slan. I think that it's bit mangled, this whole setup of rules, like trying to protect it when if you had the Temple Guard before, you're a large target, you could see over the top of them anyway. If they were within 3 inches, you sort of got this lookout ability about any attack in the missile phase, shooting phase, sorry, on a 2+, you could throw it onto any hit you took onto onto the unit. So this is going to make it better, no question. But I didn't think it was so terrible before the way that it worked. So it's going to. I think you're sort of now. Why wouldn't you take a Slan on this list? Which is okay. I don't think they're going to be winning. I still think you're going to have a hard time versus dragons, for example. But I think that the types of rules, the way this is written, is a bit complicated for what it really was trying to do. So.
Mm.
Good on them. It matches what they used to be like. Like they would sit in a unit of Temple Guard, which
Yeah,
is
every
fun.
time. I remember the pictures of it sitting in the brick. It
So
makes
some of these
sense.
other rules, are big though. Reroll once per turn, rerolling one of the d6 and making a casting roll. It knows one more spell than a normal for level of like. It's got a lot now for their points.
Yeah, but they are like 380 points, aren't they, or something?
285, yeah. And
285 before
personally,
you give them ethereal.
yeah, And so that's we're down there. But that's what I think that like you're gonna get lizardmen now that are Aslan army, which is great. Um, but I do think, yeah, people sort of it was more how much they cost than the fact that they were like terrible for what they were. I think it was like if they cost less, they weren't as I mean, you've played against it, Paddy. Like
Hmm.
it was not
That's
like,
it
oh my
doesn't
God, like
it doesn't ruin your list. That's for sure.
no, it was more that you couldn't fit other things in.
Yeah.
And you're still not going to be able to do that because the costs have stayed the same, but they will be very, very powerful casters now.
Yeah.
And
Anything
leadership
else?
9, battle standard, etc.
Anything else here that you need to talk about the palanquin?
Well, as you go down, like, is it got to the point where you get, it might be up, sorry, where you get a discipline of the old one for free, up to 50 points. So that should be in there. That's a
Yeah,
huge
I think
deal. No, it must be down the bottom.
let's be down.
So it's in there that you get
See if I can
one
control F.
discipline. Yeah,
No, I can't. I copied this over. Wisdom of the old one.
maybe just discipline.
Discipline. Nah, it's not coming out.
Yeah,
I
so
copied this over. So what is that one?
there's text in it said that you can have a free discipline of the old one up to 50 points, and then you can have another one that you pay for. So I was using ethereal a lot, which is 60, just because you would catch people by surprise. It made it survivable. Um, but now you can take for free the one that lets you have plus 3 inches to dispel, plus reroll a d6 when dispelling. And so at the worst, you're just going to take that for free. And
Yeah,
that's really good. 27-inch dispel, somewhat similar to Oaken Stave, and you're rerolling on casting one, and you've got 5 spells. Like
that doesn't
I would
sound
put
like
the
a
battle
light touch
standard
to
on it
me.
for reroll. No, I think this is I think the document is a light touch. I think the Slan has some fans in the Heffelfinger circle. Like I just don't think it was. I would think it was at the point where it's not like when Ed would put it in the F tier. I'm like, no way. It's like a C tier thing. Like you just have to play it anyway. Costs too much. Maybe it's 100 points too much, but it's still a level 4 that can fly, that you can make ethereal, that gets lookouts nearby temple guards. Yep, it loses to dragons, but how many armies are out there like that? You still get illusion magic if you want it. So with a lot of familiar,
Does
you've got a
it? I
shot.
thought it doesn't get Lookout Sir from Temple Guard. Isn't that the whole
It does.
change?
If you're within 3 inches,
Oh, they have that
and it
protector
takes a
thing
hit in the
with
shooting
Guardian.
phase on a 2+, it hits
This
them. So
thing
it's pretty much lookout
since
set.
deleted and changed. This unit may be joined by a character. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Right.
now
Okay.
they have to be in the unit. And my beautiful base, I'm gonna have to create another one.
Get a log for it and contrast paint it.
Yeah, should.
Stegodon. So yeah, we just spoke about Temple Guard. Stegodon here. What is that? So the arcane configuration, they just have
Yeah.
that's
You
is
used
that
to
the
need
plus
2.
one?
Yeah. So now you get the +1 just for the fireball, Paddy. So if you take one of them, you get +1.
Don't I'm gonna have cold sweats tonight
Yeah.
about
So
my poor wood elves
you don't
getting
need
burnt to a
both.
crisp.
So that's going to be automatic. You're going to see everyone's going to have burning configuration on an ancient steg. I think it's called burning configuration. I don't know, burning
Arcane
one, burning
configuration.
alignment.
Oh, burning alignment. Yeah.
Yeah. So it does the fireball from 15 inches,
Yeah.
or it's D6 or +1, but you need 2 to get the +1.
So now you just need the one, which is great
Now you just
because
need one.
I actually think that's good, so I don't have to see so many ancient Stegodons, maybe. Uh,
Yeah. Well, they've
so,
done it so you can't still get double in rare in 2000, so it still comes to 255. So you can't have
yeah.
2 ancient stegs with 2. You can have 2 ancient stegs, but only one of them can have burning alignment.
Salamanders. I've seen you play salamanders, and they are atrocious.
Yeah, I don't think this really fixes them.
They've got to be one of the worst units in the entire game. Like,
I don't think this fixed
weapons
it.
suck. What
I
does
looked
Column
up
of
Column
Fire
of Fire,
change
and I
it
think
to?
it just shoots the flaming template like further forward. So you can stay
Yeah.
further back, but you're still dealing with all the garbage that templates do. So you can
Yeah.
shoot it forward, but it's still a bit random how far it goes. I wouldn't
Yeah,
be playing them anytime soon, even though the model's rad. Like
it
I got
is.
the spawn of Chotek one, so it's yeah, sucks.
But that's an example of a way that you can change the game by tweaks rather than heavy-handed approach, would you reckon?
Yeah, I think so. I really like that some of the things say with demons, which no one are really playing, and I could sort of argue for say 5 to 7 things they should improve, but it was just minor details like that ward save's not going to be enough for the unit army to be viable. And so yeah, I think once people play it, see what happens, but he knows that no one's playing these armies like Skaven, which is sad for the game. I'm surprised, like obviously as a Lizardmen fan, that people thought they were that bad. That, but I definitely after reading it, I was like, oh, as someone who loves to play different armies, is willing to collect different armies. I'm like, all right, I would think about these now. They're not like I think with Skaven, I look at the double clan rats in the core and not being able to take Screaming Bell and things like that. Doom Wheel that I think, yeah, like they're just a dead army. That's gross. So it's really good, and it is a travesty that how callous those legacy PDFs are. Like I'm glad that a fan who has this sort of platform and has thought about how the community works has just put out something that is just a step forward without being this in your face. I think the problem is this specifically, and I'm going to not let anyone play it at my next tournament.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, and probably a point for us to finish up on. So thank you to everyone for listening. Thank you to all our Patreons again, and Jeff, our one YouTube member. But we're gonna be,
Thanks, Jeff.
thanks, Jeff. We're gonna be back again very soon, and we've got some exciting stuff to talk about, including possible 1,000 point tournament that we are running, which might be our soft touch to get some good games of Warhammer in, and general thoughts and feelings about the old world, which we love, as you can tell. So, Alex, thanks for your time, and everybody, thanks for watching.
Thanks, Paddy.